everybody. How are you? Morning. Now, I didn't know I was going to speak in front of a big crowd and have to look up at all these people, so excuse me for having all these notes and for referring to them. But I want to thank Karen and the folks at America Votes and the Ohio Democratic Party and ProgressOhio and NAACP and all the groups that's been working all these years to make this happen. Krill, I didn't know you were coming, but thanks for being here too. I mentioned I was a Cleveland native when I did my introduction because that's very important to me. I live in, actually work in Washington, D.C., but in the last several years, particularly since November of 2004, I may have been one of those people in the room that Karen talked about, probably not in Columbus, but in Cleveland on November 3rd, and 2004. And to me, I just shook my head because we had just finished almost 2 cycles of work. In 2000, Thaddeus Jackson and a number of people helped put together the NAACP National Voter Fund, and we had put plenty of resources into this state. We registered several thousand people across the state, but we put that effort back in place in 2004, registering over 86,000 voters, mobilizing over 600 organizers on the streets on election day, putting an election protection program in. We thought we had it made. We met all of our targets, all of our goals, all of our goals, but we didn't get there. So today, we are here in a different place, and I think it's important before we go into our sessions to talk about what we did accomplish. So I'm going to go over some numbers with you. I'm going to talk about what we've done collectively, talk about what we can do in 2010, and what the importance of this moment is. But first of all, Ohio turned blue on the for real side. It's no secret that I have put as many resources as I could into Ohio because it was the most important state. We had programs in Florida and Virginia, Nevada, North Carolina, and in places like Michigan. But this was the place where it was most important to win because we always felt that if we could win Ohio, we could win the whole country. And so we know that President Obama beat McCain by 250,000 votes, which is what we knew we had to do. But this was over based on 160,000 votes that Bush had beat Gore by in 2004, and in 2000, and compared to the 118,000 that John Kerry had lost by in 2004. So we netted 91,000 more votes in urban areas like Cleveland and Columbus and Cincinnati. Also, Obama outperformed Kerry in urban areas, but also small cities, places like Mahoning County and Mansfield and New Philadelphia. And in fact, we actually had Obama winning by 1 percentage point, 49-48 in those. Been actively involved in making election day work, but in this year we also took advantage of a new law that we helped pass in 2005. We helped bring early vote to the state, and that allowed 1.6 million people more to cast their vote before the election day than actually on election day. So what we saw was still the long lines on election day that we saw in 2004. There were long lines in early vote. And in fact, I made that decision to actually change my registration back to Ohio when I saw those long lines. On the very last day of the early vote, we had this golden week where you could register to vote on the same day. And so I stood in that long line in Cottonwood County and cast my vote as well, and became one of those few people who took advantage, one of the 13,000 people who took advantage of that law in Ohio. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. I worked real closely, and we worked real closely with America Votes and with ProgressOhio, and it was a very good effort that complemented much of the work that many of you have done in this room in the Ohio Democratic Party and for the Obama campaign. This coalition actually helped build the progressive voices that have been smothered for so long in the state and helped actually bring about real victories. And so there was a strategy to all of this, and it was a 3-pronged strategy. One, it was to maximize member communication. That basically meant that we had to talk to every possible member of each of our organizations, focusing on first building our internal programs and then turning our attention to a larger group of voters. Second, we want to focus on the entire ballot, not just president, not just Congress, but all the other seats, the county races, the House races, the Senate races. That was very important to the targeting that was done. So that made a big difference. So progressives could look for opportunities both in local ballot initiatives, local races, as well as statewide. And 3 was to build strategic persuasion and base mobilization programs. And so we worked to look at the counties with micro-targeting where there were actually possibilities of picking up voters. And there was also places that were red counties, but they were also maximizing our work in the base counties, which is what we did through the NAACP and the Voter Fund and Labor and all the friends who helped us with places like Cleveland and Dayton and Cincinnati and Columbus. There were 78 local, state, and national groups that were part of the America Votes Partnership, and that was a very important thing. Member organizations that we had focused on drop-off voters, turnout programs, targeting 2 million persuasion voters, 1.2 million doors were knocked on, 15 million pieces of mail were sent out, and 4 million phone calls were made. That's how we won this election. 2.4 million doors knocked on, 5.16 million phone calls made, and 3.3 million pieces of mail that were sent out. And so this created a nexus under which we were able to take this election. What we have to do now should be based on these next 2 years. How do we get to 2010, and then how do we get to 2012? And so as we organize, as we look at our priorities in labor, as we look at our priorities in the civil rights community, as we look at our priorities in education, let's look at these bills that are coming up. They're going to be hard fought. Michael Steele's just been elected the chair of the Republican Party. That means he's going to put money into African American turnout. He's going to put money into Latino turnout. He's from Washington, D.C. He knows all the tricks in the book, and I would not underestimate him for a minute. They put him there for a reason. In fact, he even dared to say he's going to spar with President Obama as if he's been elected President of the United States. So let me just wrap up by saying that I think this is an important time to be at this session. This is my first RootsCamp, and I'm going to learn something today myself. But this period that we're about to enter, I think, is very important. And I think the most that we can do in these next couple days, I think, is to try to gather as much information as we can, to try to claim as much as we can to take back to our organizations to see how we can better mobilize our work. So all of you, thank you for coming. Thank you for having me speak. I'm looking forward to it.